Hello and welcome to this presentation on welcome orientation for newcomers. My name is Luciano Moro. I'm the resettlement educator and CG animator for the Office for Refugees of the Archdiocese of Toronto. This session is intended for newly arrived newcomers who have been sponsored through the Archdiocese of Toronto's program, and also to assist sponsor groups or individuals who have assisted in the sponsorship of these newcomers so that they can learn and understand the various tasks and responsibilities that will be entailed during the settlement period for the newcomers. And so thank you for taking the opportunity to listen and to learn about the various tasks to be undertaken. Um, I'll be speaking a little bit about the Office for Refugees of the Archdiocese of Toronto, ORAT, so that the newcomers can understand who we are. I will also explain the rights and responsibilities of the newcomers. I'll also speak about traveling, whether it's within Canada or outside of Canada. And I will explain some of the post-arrival settlement responsibilities that sponsors will be undertaking to support and journey with the newcomers that they have sponsored. I will explain aspects of financial support and the timing when these supports are to be provided. Naturally, there may be conflict that may occur, disagreements which can be resolved. And so I'll try to explain a little bit about that. And then another new requirement is for newcomers to update their contact information as soon as they've arrived in Canada so that Immigration Canada can have their most current Canadian contact information in order to mail their documents, government issued documents like the permanent resident card to these newcomers. And then I will also give some samples of important documents which all the newcomers sponsored need to have as primary documents upon arrival, and if need to apply for them as soon as possible with the support and help of their sponsors. And then we'll conclude. So let's get started. The Office for Refugees of the Archdiocese of Toronto, or ORAT in short, is a department of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Toronto. Um, the office is the sponsorship agreement holder, which implements the sponsorship agreement on behalf of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Toronto. And this agreement is a document that is signed between the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Toronto and Citizenship and Immigration Canada, or now what is called as the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, which enables the Archdiocese of Toronto to be able to identify and name refugees that are in need of resettlement to Canada. Sponsorship agreement holders can be incorporated organizations that have entered into these formal sponsorship agreements with Immigration Canada. And most of these sponsorship agreement holders also can be religious organizations or ethno-cultural groups, or humanitarian organizations, um, as well as also settlement agencies who recently have also joined to participate in these efforts. Um, Sponsorship agreement holders usually settle refugees within a given settlement community. They can be local, they can be regional, or they can be at a national level. But their primary role is to ensure that they facilitate and manage the overall responsibilities with regard to the settlement of the refugees that they submit for processing to Immigration Canada, and ensure that those commitments are met, whether through partnerships that they enter with constituent groups or co-sponsors who may be individuals that they work with to bring those refugees to Canada. And each sponsorship agreement holder has its own criteria for recognizing and formalizing those partnerships with either constituent groups or co-sponsors in order to help in the delivery of settlement assistance and support to the refugees that are sponsored through that organization. Um, Now that you know what ORAT is, it's also important for you to understand that um, this office, the Office for Refugees of the Archdiocese of Toronto, is not a government agency, not a non-government organization, but as I indicated, a department of the Archdiocese of Toronto. We receive financial support primarily from the Archdiocese of Toronto through Share Life, which is the charitable arm of the Catholic Archdiocese of Toronto. These funds come through donations by individuals, as well as also donors who commit to assist in supporting the work of helping to resettle refugees. And for sponsorships that are done by relatives of the refugees, the funds for those sponsorships generally tend to come directly from the relatives of those refugees. And so it's worth noting that there is no financial support that we receive from the government to assist us in efforts to help in the settlement of refugees. Our office is located in Toronto, and you can find the details of the office address and website if you go to our website, which is www.orat.ca. Just as a segue from the previous slide, as I indicated, we identify refugees that we sponsor, and these refugees that we identify can be through two ways. These refugees can be refugees that are brought to our attention by relatives or family members or friends, which is what we call as the family linked cases. And for that set of refugees, primarily it is the relatives or the family members of those refugees who would fund the sponsorship of those refugees. So they would provide the financial support required for the sponsorship and settlement of those refugees. The other category where we identify refugees is through refugees who have no relatives or friends, or what we'd call as the strangers, that are identified directly by our office through mission trips that we organize to see the plight of refugees and be able to see what we can do for a select few that are identified by our office. And so for those types of refugees, especially the ones that we sponsor through Project Hope, the financial support for those refugees comes through monies that are donated by parishioners and members of the community to assist in the settlement of those refugees and to provide for their day-to-day financial needs. There is no financial support in the private sponsorship program that comes from the government of Canada. Um, the only exception is in situations where you sponsor government referred cases, such as the Blended Visa Office Refugees or the Joint Assistance Sponsorship Program, where the government contributes a certain portion of financial support to the resettlement of those types of refugees. Okay. Now, newcomers should understand that as soon as they arrive in Canada, they become permanent residents, or they are landed and become permanent residents, which is their legal status as residents of Canada. And as permanent residents of Canada, they are fully protected by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, meaning that Canadian law applies and they have full protection. So nobody can deport them back or deny them their rights as residents of Canada. However, there are a few restrictions that apply in the case of persons who are permanent residents, in this case, our newcomers, in that there's certain aspects of functions which they may not be able to participate in. For example, participating in elections or to vote in whether it is provincial, municipal, or federal elections, as well also to run for public office. They would not be able to partake of that since they are still residents. This is only a purview which is granted to Canadian citizens. Also, there are certain jobs that the newcomers may not be able to apply for, especially federal jobs that require a certain level of security clearance, including things like in the military, police, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and so on and so forth. This requires that the person be a citizen in order to participate in those kind of activities. Okay. Additionally, also, newcomers who are permanent residents do not qualify to have a Canadian passport as yet, as a passport is a document which is only issued to citizens. So at some point, once the newcomers have applied to become Canadian citizens upon meeting the mandatory requirements to become a citizen, then only and only then can they be able to apply for a Canadian passport. Okay. Newcomers are to be provided supports from the day of arrival until the end of their 12th month. And this support is a commitment that sponsors have committed with Immigration Canada to ensure that the needs of the newcomers are met through the provision of monthly financial support, as well as other non-financial supports like settlement services. For the financial support, of course, it's contingent on need, depending on whether the newcomer during the course of their settlement will be in a position to secure meaningful employment. And if they do, then there may be some adjustments with regard to the financial support that is provided to them that has to be undertaken by the sponsor. And we will speak to that later on during the presentation as I go through these sessions. Now, beyond some of these rights for the newcomers, which I explained in the previous slide, newcomers also have a responsibility to ensure that they take active steps towards integrating meaningfully to their new life in Canada. And this is especially true in terms of them taking active steps to participate in either language training, whereby they can upgrade their language abilities if they do not have a certain level of English or French that they can speak. As well, also newcomers who have skills and would like to work would need to go and seek counseling so that they can understand how to gain employment or to secure employment. This is especially critical since the need to secure employment is essential when the newcomer needs to move into their own rental accommodation down the road. most landlords would want to know or be sure that a person who is renting their property has a job or has a source of income. And so this would be very helpful in that regard. And since the settlement period is only 1 year, which is 12 months, which is a very short period, so it would be critical that newcomers actively look towards seeking employment so that they can be able to be financially self-sufficient before the end of their sponsorship year, and to be able to uh, fulfill and meet their needs on their own after the end of the support that they would be receiving from their sponsors. Newcomers also are encouraged very strongly to ensure that they follow and abide by the Canadian laws. Any attempt um, to breach the laws of Canada could result in severe consequences, whereby they could be um, brought before the justice system. And unfortunately, if it results in a conviction in a court of law, this could lead eventually to um, them serving term in a prison. And if that is the case, then upon the end of their term of service, they could initiate proceedings to deport them back to the country of origin. So we do not want this to happen to any of our newcomers. So it's important that when the newcomers arrive, they should follow the law and not get themselves involved in any activities that could result in them facing the justice system. In situations where there's conflict, we strongly encourage that newcomers contact our office as soon as it's possible, but initially consulting with their sponsors or their sponsoring group to try to resolve those issues amicably. And I will speak to this a bit later on in the presentation to ensure that I provide further clarity on how we can deal with family crises that occur. Now, let's talk about traveling, whether it's within or outside of Canada. Um, when newcomers arrive um, to, to Canada, they're expected to settle in their community of settlement. This is the original community where they were intended to come and live in. And so therefore, it's essential that when the newcomer arrives, they stay with their sponsors. In the event that they choose to move out from their community of settlement, the newcomer must be aware that they may forfeit further support, meaning that they may lose support from their sponsors who are based in the community where they're supposed to settle. And this could result in the termination of their sponsorship by Immigration Canada, which is something unfortunate which we do not want. So we strongly ask that newcomers, once they have been sponsored, they need to stay and be supported in the community where they were originally intended to, to stay. If a newcomer chooses to move for reasons which may be related to either work, employment, or something beyond their control, it's important that the sponsor be notified and our office needs to be notified so that we can find a way around that in order to be in compliance of the settlement requirements that we are obligated to follow by Immigration Canada. Um, with regard to travel um, within Canada, newcomers, of course, can visit friends or relatives or go for tours out within Canada or outside of the area of settlement, as long as they will be able to come back upon going for a visit. But if the newcomer chooses to move to travel outside of Canada, then they need to understand that one of the places they cannot go to is the country of citizenship where they came from originally, their country of citizenship. As well, also the country where they were in asylum, because this would imply that if they were to travel there, they would be considered as having re-availed themselves to the country where they originally fled from, for reasons that their life was at risk. And upon return to Canada, the Canada Border Service agencies could initiate removal proceedings against them, whereby they could lose their status as permanent residents. So we strongly encourage that newcomers do not travel to their country of citizenship or their country of origin where they had fled from in order to avoid that situation. They can only return to their country of origin once they have become Canadian citizens. At that point, as a Canadian citizen, they would have the full protection of the government of Canada um, for them as a citizen of Canada. So that would be the only time when they can be able to go back to their country of origin, either to visit friends, relatives, and so on and so forth. But they should not do that while they are still permanent residents. If the newcomer decides to travel outside of Canada, any other country other than their country of origin, then there are certain things that they have to be aware about. First, they need to apply for a travel document before they can travel. And the travel document is something which allows them to be able to go and be able to also to return to Canada upon re-entering Canada. But there are certain considerations also that newcomers need to know, that using a travel document is not necessarily guaranteed that it can be accepted by all countries. So they need to check first with the countries through which they'll be either transiting or they will be going to, whether they need to apply for a visa from those countries or not, or if they need to have a passport, which in this case they likely do not have. For some newcomers who do not have passports, they may not um, then need to travel there because certain countries may not accept or recognize travel using travel documents or on a permanent resident card. So these are considerations to keep in mind. And the last thing is that once a newcomer has traveled outside of Canada, they should know that there is a certain number of days that you can be allowed to stay outside of Canada as a permanent resident. Anytime you stay beyond that, upon returning to Canada, you could jeopardize also your status as a permanent resident, meaning that you could lose your status. So we strongly recommend that newcomers, especially during their sponsorship year and before they become Canadian citizens, they should be aware of some of these restrictions that apply to permanent residents. Okay, now that we have resolved the issue of travel, let's talk about some of the settlement responsibilities that your sponsors will be undertaking with you during your first 12 months of sponsorship. First, from the time of your arrival, at least until the past 3 weeks or almost 1 month, your sponsor will be obviously there to receive you at the airport when you arrive. They will try to assist you with your very immediate and essential needs, including, as indicated, they are meeting you at the airport when you arrive, providing you transportation to your final destination, and to the place of your accommodation upon arrival. Your sponsors will also work closely with you to help to identify any urgent health needs that may require immediate attention, which may be known to them, as this information will be disclosed in the notice of arrival transmission that is sent before your travel, and which would indicate what kind of medical conditions require follow-up post arrival in Canada. Your sponsors also will work very closely to ensure that you have a suitable place to stay. You have your basic needs, whether it's food, clothing, and many other things, household items that you require. And they will assist you also to buy appropriate clothing depending on the season when you arrive, so that you can be able to have those necessities, whether it is setting up a phone or internet and accessing any other emergency services that you may need in the community where you have settled. Your sponsors also will work very closely with you to help orient you in the community of settlement, so that you know how to navigate your way um, in the community where you have settled, by showing you how to use the local public transit system, by showing you how to go grocery shopping, how to do shopping, and other things that you need to know to assist you um, to integrate very well. They will also help you to open a bank account so that you can be able to deposit your checks that you receive from ORAT or from your sponsor groups, for those who are sponsored through the Project Hope program of ORAT. And that way, and then you can manage your finances effectively. Um, Additional also, after you've arrived, we strongly encourage you to attend the welcome orientation session, which is an online video pre-recorded, which you can watch at your own time. This is for those who are sponsored by their relatives, but for those who are sponsored by ORAT's project or program, you would receive an invitation on a set day to come and um, attend your welcome orientation at ORAT, where you would have an opportunity to meet our staff and members of the outreach team who would be working hand in hand with your sponsor groups to assist you in your settlement period, and so that you know who to contact in case if you have any questions or anything like that throughout your settlement period. Um, the other aspects also that to follow after the first um, a few days after arrival and into the 1 month of arrival is that your sponsors will help you to apply for various federal and provincial programs and services, including um, access to the health insurance plan in Ontario. It is the Ontario Health Insurance Plan, which will assist you to be able uh, to access medical help if you are sick, to see a doctor or go to the hospital or a walk-in clinic, as well also to ensure that you have your interim federal health plan, which is the federal um, medical insurance plan for sponsored newcomers. That is to cover access to certain um, supplementary health insurance programs for 1 year. And additionally, also, they will assist you to apply for a social insurance number, which enables you to be able to work in Canada. And for newcomers who have families with children, to assist you to apply for the Canada Child Benefits as soon as possible, including the tax credits for the goods and sales tax, or the harmonized sales tax credits, which are additional um, services which you can receive to supplement any income that you would be receiving from your sponsors. The sponsors also will assist you to register your children in school. In case if the children have not received vaccinations, they will be assisted to receive the necessary vaccinations required for school-aged children. As well also with the support of your sponsors, where in there any other additional healthcare services that are required, they will be able to refer you to access those services, including helping you to find a family doctor, a dentist, and so on and so forth. Your sponsors also during this time will work very closely with you to ensure that you are registered with a settlement agency, so that They can do a needs assessment to determine additionally what other needs you might have, which will need to be looked after during the months ahead. In month 1 to 3, your sponsors will, as I said, work continuously to address your early settlement needs, which I outlined in the previous slide, as well as also to orient you in your community and also to help find permanent housing if you have not already been settled into a permanent place, and to update the contact information that has your Canadian address so that your permanent resident card can be mailed to the address which is appropriate. During month 4 to 6, your sponsors will work very hard with you in cooperation and collaboration with the settlement agencies where you have been registered in, so that you can begin to think about opportunities for work or employment, wherein if you have a desire to work, so that you can begin to look for ways to apply and also to upgrade your skills if necessary, upgrading your language level, whether it's English as a second language or language instructions for newcomers, as well as also for those who have family members who are non-accompanying and have yet to arrive, to begin the process to initiate the 1-year window of opportunity process through our office. This you would be working closely with our case processing team to initiate that process for the 1-year window, so that those family members who are left behind, who have yet to travel, can be processed to join the rest of the family in Canada. And then during month 7 to 9, at this mid point of the sponsorship, sponsors will be identifying any unmet needs that have not yet been addressed to try to address those service gaps, as well as also begin the process to transition you now to ensure that you can begin to independently support yourself, as well as with a view to looking towards the end of the sponsorship year. And so this is a critical time when your sponsors will need your cooperation to work hand in hand with you to ensure that you are able to begin to support yourself financially and in other ways. And if not, then to begin to see how that can be done collaboratively with your cooperation. And by around month 10 to 12, at this point, your sponsors now will be checking off the various dots to make sure that everything that you have has been accomplished, including all the necessary documents that you need to have been obtained, access to financial supports have been provided, and if you're working, that you are managing your budget well and also contributing to your own needs. And this also at this point would be a time to begin conversations, especially for those who may not be working by this point, to begin to consider prospects of how they will manage financially at the end of their sponsorship year. So conversations around how to apply for financial support from the social assistance programs, how they work, and what that implies for you, especially the newcomer who is sponsored. While we strongly discourage seeking social assistance during your sponsorship year, if inevitably you fail to secure employment during your settlement year, unfortunately, that may be the only avenue out, and those conversations will need to be had. So you have an understanding of how limited that support is and what is required in order to qualify for that. However, for Project Hope cases, we strongly encourage that those newcomers seek actively employment opportunities in order to be able to support themselves financially, as this is the best way in order to make headway with your life. It's important that you note that throughout the settlement period, if you move or if you change addresses or any contact information, that this be updated in the Immigration Canada portal, so that Immigration Canada has the latest contact information for the newcomers. And you can do that by, as in this next slide. But for example, for the permanent resident card, your sponsor can assist you to update your Canadian mailing address or your contact information by either calling the Immigration Canada Client Support Center at 1-888-242-2100, or you can email Immigration Canada with the updated information for the newcomer at that email address. The other information also that you need to provide can be sent by web form. That is, if the newcomer has changed their address, you go online to Immigration Canada's website, which is www.cic.gc.ca, and look for the IRCC web form, and you can send in the updated address through the web form for change of address. If the newcomer's email or phone number has also changed, you can equally update Immigration Canada by sending that information directly using the web form, which is available on the Immigration Canada website. Okay. Now, as a newcomer, it's important to note that Immigration Canada will routinely be monitoring your progress in your settlement by touching base with you through either a phone call or an email survey, which is sent anonymously only to you without the knowledge of your sponsor. And this survey is intended to find out whether you have been able to access the supports that you are entitled to from your sponsor. Obviously, we strongly encourage that once you have received such communication from Immigration Canada, that you inform your sponsor so that they're aware and can be able to assist you to respond effectively to this request. But you, as a permanent resident, also has a choice. You can either participate in these surveys or you can decline to participate in such surveys. That is your choice. There is no pressure. There's no consequence for not participating in such surveys. So that is something that you should know. However, in the event that you choose to participate, please be aware that any information that you share will be assessed against your sponsor's supports obligations, and if anything varies from what your sponsor has provided, and then there may be an investigation initiated to determine if in fact support has been provided. It's a very cumbersome process, and you will be involved in order to provide documents, whether it's your bank account statements or personal documents, to satisfy and confirm that in fact those supports have been provided to you. So be aware of that in the event that you participate in those surveys from Immigration Canada. However, we strongly encourage that you make those choices on an informed basis in order to do so. For your sponsors, we strongly encourage that any supports that you provide to the newcomer must be documented, so that in the event that they are monitored, you can be able to provide proof for those supports. That is, any financial support must be provided by way of checks or e-transfers, so that it is easy to trace those supports. Please avoid providing any cash support to the newcomer, as that is not easy to trace. ORAT also does check in with these newcomers to ensure that the support they are receiving is being met, and to ensure that in the event that there's any gaps in those supports, we can be able to communicate with the sponsors to ensure that they fulfill those responsibilities during the settlement period. Like I said in the initial slides about the support that newcomers receive, the primary source of support for sponsorships, as I said, is either their relatives, if it's a family link sponsorship, or it is ORAT, the Archdiocese of Toronto, for newcomers who are strangers without relatives or friends who are sponsored through the Project Hope initiative. Therefore, it is important that those funds that are provided to the newcomers are utilized responsibly and prudently during their first year of settlement. And this is to ensure that the newcomers can become self-sufficient very quickly. Newcomers are not required to pay back their co-sponsors or sponsor groups or ORAT for any financial support that they are provided during the first year of settlement. In the case of newcomers who are sponsored through Project Hope or the non-family linked types of sponsorships, support can also be reduced through the provision of in-kind donations or items which will reduce the cost of purchasing those items by providing them in kind. So that will be factored in the budget. For newcomers who have children, there are additional monies that they can expect to receive from the government programs like the Canada Child Benefits, or for those who have disabilities, they can apply for the Ontario Disability Support Program, or DSP, which is an additional benefit they can receive through those programs. Please, as a newcomer, remember that your financial support may be adjusted during your settlement period, depending on whether there are additional monies that you're receiving through other government programs, like for those who are receiving, for example, money that they have brought with themselves during their time of arrival in Canada and it has been declared, that can be considered as income, as well as also those who are working. If you have started work and are earning an income, your financial support can be adjusted to reflect your net employment income. And that discussion you will be had with your sponsorship group in order to ensure that the level of support you receive is in the equivalent of the resettlement assistance program support that is required for you during your settlement period. Okay, so that is something to keep in mind, that your financial support may be adjusted during your settlement year if you have brought with you personal assets. Personal assets can be either cash or valuable items that you brought with you upon arrival in Canada and have declared those assets to your sponsors, as well as also if you're working, you have found employment and are working, and then your net income will be assessed and determined to adjust the level of financial support you can receive from your sponsor accordingly. Okay. Now, the timing of when you can receive your financial support. Initially, the first check that you can expect to receive will include the startup funds or startup costs, which include basically amounts of money for setting up your place of accommodation and other household items that you will need initially when you've just arrived, plus 3 months worth of resettlement assistance support which is basically like your monthly allowance to meet your day-to-day needs, whether it is food, paying for your bills, for internet, phone, etc., etc. So your first check will tend to be fairly significant um, compared to the remaining balance of the checks that you do receive in the subsequent months. But it's important for you to understand that a portion of that check includes your startup costs, which will be discussed with your sponsor group so that you know exactly how those funds are allocated. The second check which you will receive will be to cover 3 months or so of your support, and that is to cover month 4 to 6. And that check will include again monies that will help you to meet your day-to-day needs for the month, for 3 months. And in the event that at that point, if the newcomer is already working or has started work, the amount that you will receive will be adjusted based on the net employment income that you have earned. The same thing for the third check, which you will receive, which would cover month 7 to 9, and the month monthly support check for the 3 months that cover month 7 to 9 also includes your monthly allowances for all the expenses for the month. And if the newcomer is still working at that point also, that amount can be adjusted, especially for Project Hope cases. The amount will be adjusted accordingly, depending on the net employment income that the newcomer is earning. The only exception is for newcomers who are full-time students, as well as working. In those situations, according to the rules of Immigration Canada, those funds will not be adjusted for full-time students who are newcomers. The fourth check and the final check also is intended to cover month 10 to 12. And equally, like in the previous checks, if the newcomer is also working, that check can be adjusted to factor in the net employment income that the newcomer is receiving at that point. Okay. And just so you know, all the checks for sponsored cases are issued directly to the newcomer. So the newcomer will be responsible to deposit that money directly into their bank account. For newcomers that are sponsored by Project Hope or by the Archdiocese of Toronto through the parish groups, they will receive their checks directly from the parish issued to them, and then they will be able to deposit those checks directly into their bank accounts after the necessary adjustments have been taken into account. Some of the adjustments that I spoke about in the checks that the newcomers would receive include personal assets. So these are valuable items that newcomers bring with them when they arrive in Canada. And when they declare these assets, then those will be factored into their budget as well. Okay. The other component that is considered when adjusting the financial support is, as I indicated earlier, is the net employment income. So if the newcomer is working and has secured a job, then the check that they receive, the pay that they receive from their employment, the amount, the net amount that they receive will be calculated based on the formula provided for the RAP support by Immigration Canada, will be adjusted to ensure that the final amount that they keep versus the amount that they receive as their settlement support from their sponsor is in line with the monthly allowance that they are expected to receive. As I indicated, the only caveat to this is that if there is a newcomer who is employed, but also is attending secondary school on a full-time basis, then that income will not be factored into the total amount that is to be calculated for the family's earnings. Okay. Then let's talk about situations of conflict, as I indicated previously. Unfortunately, conflict is inevitable among humans, and we do recognize that sometimes you may have disagreements with your sponsors. However, if and when such a situation occurs, we would ask that you initially discuss this, your concerns or your challenges with your sponsor or your church refugee committee to try to see if it can be resolved. If, however, that does not produce any results, then we ask that you contact our office by either sending us an email at outreach@archtoronto.org, or you can call our office line number, which is indicated there, 647-494-5419, to request for our intervention. Our outreach team will be able to reach out to you to see if they can find a way to mediate and to facilitate a process of reconciling any differences that may have arisen. It is our responsibility to ensure that we investigate and work very closely with the newcomer as well as their sponsor to resolve any issues. We may ask for additional documents to ensure that we do this work effectively, and to also to assess a remedy. If, however, we are unable to rectify the situation, then as a final resort, we may involve Immigration Canada to step in and to provide an officer who can assist to mediate also in resolution of the situation. So these are some of the steps, but definitely we would strongly encourage that if there's a situation of disagreement, that you reach out to your sponsor or your sponsor group as soon as possible to try to find a solution to the issue. If it's not, then please contact our office as soon as you're able so that we can step in to see what to do. Most newcomers may have signed a travel loan, or what we call as the immigration travel loan, which assisted in them securing their flight tickets and also in meeting their medical costs and so on and so forth before traveling to Canada. So it's important to know that repayment of your travel loan does not begin right away, but rather repayment for your travel loan, your immigration travel loan, begins a year after the end of your sponsorship period. So be aware that your immigration travel loan is interest-free and you can begin to pay it back at the end of your sponsorship year. If you have any questions about knowing your immigration travel loan, you can call the toll-free number on the screen there, which is 1-800-667-7301. Or you can email the Immigration Travel Loan Department, which is responsible for collection of the travel loans, at that email address, collection@cic.gc.ca, to ask them to provide you a copy of your travel loan. So if in case you would like to begin repayment of the travel loan in earnest before the end of your sponsorship year. Okay. The other aspect to be aware about as a newcomer is that there are a number of situations where you could encounter an emergency or a fraud. In case you encounter an emergency and you don't have anyone around to assist you, the number to call is 911. So when you call 911, you dial 911 on your phone. the three things that you will be asked to confirm your emergency is all about is whether it is a situation of a medical emergency, whether it's a fire emergency, or if it is a police emergency with regard to a criminal or violent activity. So you need to identify any one of these three, and on that basis, a response will be provided to come to your attention wherever you're located. So make sure that the newcomer knows how to use the emergency services of 911. Okay. Additionally, also sometimes there are scams that can occur where a newcomer may be scammed into providing personal information by fraud or fraudsters. And so therefore, if such a thing occurs, we strongly ask that you call the toll-free number 1-888-495-8501 and report the fraud that has occurred to you, so that it can be investigated and you will be advised on appropriate steps to take in order to protect your identity. Finally, there are certain important documents that the newcomer needs to be aware that they need to have in their possession as soon as they arrive, and throughout their settlement period. They should ensure that these documents they have obtained or have been issued to them. This includes the confirmation of permanent residence. This is the document that is issued to you at the airport upon arrival, and it is the document which recognizes your legal status as a permanent resident in Canada. Secondly, it's the permanent resident card. This is a piece of card which is issued to the newcomer after they have arrived, and I will show you examples of these in the subsequent slides, that you need to have in your possession and you can carry with you as like your piece of ID. The permanent resident card is mailed to the newcomer's address, which is provided at the airport upon arrival, and it is usually mailed usually after 2 months, but sometimes could be longer. But make sure that you have your permanent resident card with you. Then also a social insurance number, as I indicated in the previous slides, that this is the document that is issued to the newcomer to ensure that they can work in Canada. It legally allows you to be able to work in Canada. And make sure that you protect your permanent resident card, rather your social insurance number, to ensure that it's you do not share the information with anyone except a few recognized entities that may have access to it. For example, like if the government requires to see your social insurance number for tax purposes when you're filing your taxes, that is okay. Or the bank, when you're opening a bank account, they may need to see your social insurance number. Or your employer, if you find employment, then they may ask to see your social insurance number. Okay, so those are the few instances when you may share your social insurance number, but beyond that, please protect your social insurance number. Also, make sure that you have applied or have in your possession the Ontario Health Insurance Plan. This is the one which allows you to access medical services, whether it's seeing a doctor or going to the hospital, or to receive prescription drugs. You need to be able to provide your Ontario Health Insurance Plan. The interim federal health insurance plan is issued at the airport on the day you arrive to Canada. Make sure that that document, you can be able to use it to access prescription drugs and other supplementary services that are not covered by OHIP during the first year of your settlement. So the first 12 months of your arrival in Canada, that document needs to help you to access those services, including mental health counseling as well, which you can register for. And the interim federal health plan is administered by the Medvedev Blue Cross, and you can go to their website to see what services are covered, so that you know exactly when you need to use it. I already talked about the travel loan, that you should have a copy of your travel loan that was issued to you at the embassy when you had your interviews. A copy was provided to you, but if you don't, then you can contact the travel loan department to obtain a copy. I provided you the details of how to contact them in the previous slides. Some newcomers may be interested in driving, so you can apply for a driver's license. Unfortunately, that you would need to pay out of pocket because that is not covered under the settlement financial support that is provided to you by your sponsors. You also need to apply for a library card to assist you to access various services that are provided at the library using your library card. These are samples of the documents that I've talked about. So this is the confirmation of permanent resident document, or what we call in short as the landing paper, which is issued to you at the airport upon arrival. Please make sure that you protect this document and keep it safe, the original, as it will be required when you apply for your Canadian citizenship application. As well, also when you retire and you're applying for pensions, this document may be asked to be provided. This is what the permanent resident card looks like. So this is the document that you will receive, and you can carry as an identity document. But be aware that the permanent resident card expires every 5 years. So every 5 years, once it is expired, you need to renew in order to have the new one. This is the Ontario Health Insurance Plan. So it looks like this with your photo. Make sure that you have it and it is used to help you access health services within Ontario. The interim federal health certificate document also looks like this, which is issued to you at the airport when you arrive, and you can use it to access additional supplementary health coverage that is not covered by OHIP. And the social insurance number is what I talked about already. And these are some of the places where you can share your social insurance number. So for employment, when you're filing your taxes, please be aware that all Canadians, whether they're residents or citizens, are required to file for taxes every year. This is to ensure that the government can assess your tax contributions, but also if you're not working or if you're not employed, you still need to file taxes, because that will help the government to assess whether you can receive certain government benefits, including goods and sales tax credits or the harmonized sales tax credits as well. Okay, so make sure you file your taxes at the end of each year. And the tax season is usually from January up to April, the deadline being April 31st. Then for financial institutions like the banks or credit unions, also they may ask to access your social insurance number in order to open an account. When you file for the Canada Child Benefits for those newcomers with family or with children, make sure that you provide also your social insurance number, as that is required in the application. And for newcomers who apply for student loans, you may also be required to provide a copy of your social insurance number. In some situations, newcomers, when they have not yet received their permanent resident card, they may want to have a piece of ID that they can use in order to confirm that they are residents of Ontario. They can be able to move around to show as a piece of ID. So sometimes you can go to Service Ontario and you can apply for the Ontario Photo ID, which is a document which is issued by the government of Ontario. But make sure that you are aware that when you apply for the Ontario Photo ID, you will have to pay out of pocket, as this is something that is not covered by sponsors in their budget. However, it's a good document to have, especially if you do not have a driver's license yet. However, when you apply for a driver's license, then your Ontario Photo ID will be returned or revoked, as you can only have one, not both. So make sure that you're aware about that. And I talked about the public library card, which you can apply for as well. So that concludes the presentation. I hope that this information has been useful to you. And should you have any further questions, feel free to reach to our outreach team by contacting them at outreach@archtoronto.org, or you can call their main line at 647-494-5419. And of course, our office is located at 830 Bathurst Street, Suite 104 in Toronto, Ontario, with the postal code 5M5R 3G1. And I thank you for your attention to this, and I wish you all the best and welcome to Canada.